Hi, I'm Joe and welcome to the channel. I always do appreciate you taking the time to watch these videos and I thank you very much for stopping by. In this series of videos, we're looking at different genres of music and we're learning guitar parts that would fit that genre. In this case here, we're taking a look at early blues rock. Let's go ahead and break this song down. So this song has 3 guitar parts. And the first one is a variation off of a typical blues type of pattern that you would play with power chords and adding the 6th in. But what's different here is that you can tell that this type of genre of music borrowed from the blues, but it also tweaked them a little bit. In a traditional blues, you would play this as a shuffle feel. Well, in this case here, it's more of a straight 8th feel happening. And another interesting thing that we're doing is that we're not necessarily following the typical blues chord progression. The typical blues chord progression would be like the 1, 4, back to the 1, to the 5. This one here is doing something very different. Basically, it's taking the 1 chord and sliding it up to the 3, the 3rd, which is a B, and it's a B major and not a B minor. So typically, if you're playing in G, you would have G major, A minor, B minor, and C, D, and E minor. So typically the 3rd degree of this scale would be, if you're building a chord off of it, would be a B minor chord. Well, in this case here, we're doing a major. So it actually tweaks the listener's ear a little bit. So we're going from a G major to the 3rd as a major. So it's very interesting. So that's one thing. And the other thing then after that is we take that B and we move it up to the C, which would be your 4 chord. And then we're going to do a sharp 5. So we're going to D sharp first, down to the 5th, or the 5 chord, which would be D. So the chord progression again is G to the 3 major, to the 4, to the sharp 5, down to the 5. And again, it's not a shuffle feel, it's more of a straight 8th feel. And we're doing this type of pattern. So for the first part of the song, we're hanging on that G chord, and then we're going to go into that crazier chord progression afterwards. So here it is up tempo. It starts all over again, that progression. So this song again starts off with a very typical blues pattern, which is your power chord, so your G and your D, and I'm just using my 2nd finger because I need to get that stretch going with my pinky, but you can play it also with your 3rd finger. And what you're doing is you're adding now the 6th with your pinky on the 7th fret of the A string, so you're picking up that E. So you're changing the D to the E. And you're rocking back and forth between those 2 chords. And towards the end, I actually add the flat 7, which would be the F. Which again is a typical blues move. And I just add that just for a little bit of flavor before I go to the B major chord. And the same pattern I'm doing for all the other chords then. So we come up to the B, and the same idea. Take where your 3rd finger would be, or in my case the 2nd finger, and add 2 frets away your pinky. Slide that up to the C, same pattern. And for here we're doing just power chords for the sharp 5, down to the D, just simple power chords. And then we end the song on a G dominant 7. And how do you get that flavor chord? If you know your bar chords, which is, this is borrowing from the E major shape, We're just pretending that our first finger was the nut, and we slide this down. We now have G major. So if we take this chord, lift up our pinky, now all of a sudden we have a dominant 7th chord. The second guitar part is basically playing something that might be played on a Hammond organ. We're just taking those lines and we're adding them to the guitar. And all it is basically is coming off of this G major, and I'm using the top half notes, so starting with the B, the D, this top half chord. And all I'm really doing actually is just doing double stops, so I'm just focusing on these 2 strings here, the G and the B string, playing the notes B and D, and then I'm going to slide up to play basically part of a C chord, just this top half. So we're taking again a double stop approach here, playing a C and an E, and then I'm sliding up and I'm playing now a D and an F. Well, where does that come from? Well, if you know your chords and you know you have basically this D shape of a G chord up here, if you take it and make it a G7, the dominant 7th chord like you learned in the first part, we're actually just borrowing those notes from that chord. So what we're doing here with this Hammond organ line is basically we're outlining a G to a C, sliding up to a G7, back down to the G. And that's all that part really is, but it's a really fun part to play. And always I encourage you to listen to other types of music and other instruments to kind of come up with interesting lines and things that you can borrow from those players. Now when the song goes into the interesting part with the B chord, we're basically going to take the double stop approach idea again, and we're only going to play 2 notes of each chord. So basically here, if we're looking at this B, and we're looking at a B7, I'm only going to play these 2 notes right here, the F sharp and the D sharp. And I'm playing that, and then I'm going to slide that whole shape up to pick up now the C. So basically now I'm playing a G and an E. And we're doing the same exact move for the sharp 5 down to the D. And if you didn't notice by now, I put a little tremolo on this guitar part, again to simulate a little bit of an organ feel. What's really interesting too about this line is you can actually move this anywhere and play it. So let's say we're going to do a typical blues, where we're doing the G and we're going to come up to the C. You could do the same lick up here. So it's really a very versatile lick that you can move around anywhere on the guitar neck. So for the third guitar part, what we're going to be basically doing is playing a C chord up high and lifting off and have our G chord underneath it. Well, how do we do that? Well, if you take your 3rd finger and put it on the 14th fret of the D string, you have an E. If you put your 1st finger on the 12th fret of the G string, you have a G. And if you take your 2nd finger and put it on the 13th fret of the B string, you have C. So now we have that C triad. Now, if we flatten our 1st finger all across the 12th fret, we actually already have a G major chord. G major chord is made up of G, B, and D. But I'm playing the D down here, which is on our 12th fret of obviously the D string. So what we can do here is we can play off of the 2nd guitar part. If you remember that part, it had this G and a C back up to the G7. Well, when it comes to that C, what we're going to do is emphasize it with the 3rd guitar part. And we'll play the C and then come off for the G chord. And that's all that guitar part really is. So basically it's emphasizing again the 2nd guitar part. So you can see this style of music is very influenced by the blues, but there's a couple of tweaks in there. And a takeaway for you is to experiment with different chords. Don't always do what's so obvious to play as far as a chord progression goes. Try to throw in different types of chords and flavors. Use your ears. Your ears are never wrong. If it sounds good, it is good and it is right. So I encourage you, go ahead and experiment with some different types of chords in your songs. That's another video down for this series. Thank you as always for taking the time to watch these. I really do appreciate it. If you like what you saw and you found any value in whatsoever, please do me a favor and consider subscribing down below. Hit the like button and knock on the bell and you'll be notified when the next video comes out in this series. Until next time, have a great day.